Whereas in Finland, we were used to be quite humble and saying that you should not try to kind of make a number of yourself. Hey, Ville Tolvanen, that's the digital guy. He talks digital, he knows digital, he works digital. Your best work and job insurance is to be known. Somebody starts to imitating or harassing you, it means that you really have reached something. I learned from 10 years now within social media and kind of personal branding experience that you can't guess what the audience likes.
Hello, Ville. How are you doing? How's Italy?
Hello, Petri. Thanks for having me. I'm in Piemonte, not so close to the war zone, but between Turin and Milano. So it's quite calm and cool actually here, getting better and better every day. And I guess the whole Europe is now getting ready to live with the virus side by side.
Let's go back a bit in time. It's late 80s, you're 16 years old, and you find yourself in US, and you didn't actually arrive where you wanted to be. You wanted to be in Texas, but you just landed somewhere else. And pretty much the first person you meet is Hillary Clinton. What happened?
Yes, I'm originally from Oulu, Finland, which is northern part city in the kind of middle or northern part of Finland, and wanted to go to States to live the American dream as an exchange student. And I had a friend who went to Houston and told all about cowboys and chicks and hot swimming pools and all those parties. So I really wanted to go to Texas. And where did I end up? Little Rock, Arkansas. Back then, I think third most poorest state in US. But it was good. And back in time, of course, that was the peak of the American dream from the movies, Wall Street, Top Gun, Working Girl. The whole American dream was alive and well. And Hillary Clinton was the lady of the state for being next to Bill Clinton, who was governor back then. So the lady of the state, in a sense, met all the exchange students and kind of welcomed us all over the world to the States. So I was, of course, watching all the girls and enjoying good weather instead of politics. But I was there. I have a picture, but that's all.
I can imagine that the life was a bit different from Oulu, which is pretty close to the Arctic Circle, and then you landed in opposite side of the world, more or less. Maybe the attitudes, culture, was there something, which sort of stick to your mind or maybe defined a bit your, further years?
Yes, of course. As I mentioned, that was the big era of the great American dream movies, and I enjoyed all of them. I still know some of the wording for Wall Street, buddy, money never sleeps, and so on. So that was really the time. So I was quite thrilled actually to go back then to States, and the standard of living was different, even in Arkansas, with all the people having their own houses, couple of cars, weather is pretty good, and all that. So it was all cool and new to the boy from Oulu, kind of paper city, which actually then became one of the major places for Nokia R&D. But in my youth, it was a paper mill city. And the first thing that actually kind of got my attention was the attitude towards success. Whereas in Finland, we were used to be quite humble and saying that you should not try to kind of make a number of yourself and be humble and try your best, and you will be then kind of well received in a sense. But in States it was all different. They said, if you reach the top of the trees, you reach the moon. So the attitude towards success and being entrepreneur was totally different that I had learned in Oulu, Finland. So it really changed my thinking. And when I came back from the year in Arkansas, I was ready to go to business school and start my career, just like Buddy Fox in Wall Street.
How old were when you founded your first company?
I have co-founded 15 different companies. So my first job was with a software company called Q.P.R. Software at 95, right after the big recession in Finland. And I started there by going to the bank and getting 20,000 Finmarks, which is about 4,000 or 5,000 euros, and taking a loan to actually invest to be one of the co-founders for the software company developing management software like balance scorecard and process guides and all that. And I was kind of co-founder in a couple of companies, but I was actually a little bit over 30 when I founded my first 100% owned professional service company called Markitects. That was 2005.
Now everybody wants to live in a countryside, and I would say you probably are in a pretty much in the ideal place at this point. You know, you're in the middle of a beautiful scenery, and sun is shining. You tried that already before. Was it around that time, 2005 or something? You wanted to go to Italy and just leave it everything behind and
Yes.
do remote work.
Yes, you've done your homework. Actually, I've tried to be global or mobile nomad for several times. The first attempt was 2005. As you mentioned, we sold all our property and kind of stuff back then and had a little money and moved to Milan. My wife had studied in university in Italy and spoke a little bit Italian. So we moved to Milan. But what happened back then was that I started getting a lot of job offers all over or all around the world. Nokia was big name back then, so I received job offers from China and London and Helsinki and Oulu, and it took only 6 months for us to actually return to Finland and me starting my own first company, Markitects. And then 2010, 5 years after that, I started kind of discussing, talking, advancing, consulting digitalisation, where my aim was to become mobile and kind of move my consulting business into kind of onto a platform and kind of free myself from time and location. And what happened 2010 then was that I got so busy on building digital network and consulting that I was actually kind of tied up to Helsinki and living in the city, and so busy that there was no way I could imagine that I could live on a remote or actually kind of central location as this. This is very close to France and Alps and wine and very easy to fly to anywhere in the world. So although we are in the countryside, I feel that we are actually in the middle of everything. But then this is the third attempt now. A year ago, we bought an old stone house from Piemonte in Jesus Cappuccino, and now we're renovating it, and I'm doing board work and some consulting, advising, and living here.
Do you think there's still hope for Airbnb and this type of a tourism, which I think you basically building or renovating for?
Oh, thanks for asking. One of my favorite kind of ideas is not back to the future, but back to the tomorrow. And I think the crisis is like a perfect storm and an opportunity for us to really rethink everything what we do in business, what's the role of organization, how fixed our assets are, what's our scope on traveling and all that. So I think we're starting or in the middle of a perfect storm, and now we need to rethink everything. And I don't think that anything will return as it was. But what will happen, I think, that we will be more interested in locations, freedom, kind of standard of living, the lifestyles, and the business models. And we have already, I think, learned that most of things we can do on these platforms and really finally capitalize the digital investment in any business. And I think that's the key to think. I'm not thinking whether Airbnb will become back, but I'm sure if you come here and visit us and you see the wine and food and weather and people, you love to spend time here, no matter whether it's business or pleasure.
Do you think that people would actually stay for longer periods of times, not just for the weekend or the 1 week or 2 week holiday, but they would book you for like 2 months, work there, and it's more like a temporary, permanent residence there for a while.
Petri, you're really reading my mind. We already got inquiry for 2 month rental, full house, everything kind of included for July and August, and the money wasn't issued. That was part of the thing. So as I said, I think we could accommodate teams of doing co-creation or remote work or anything here. And I have to mention one of the kind of guiding principles I've had. I went to the Athens, I think it was 2014 or something, and it was late August or early September, and for some reason it was raining all week on vacation there, and that's when I read the 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, and he had idea of these mini retirements and mini breaks during the work life. And of course, the story of 4-Hour Work Week was Tim getting really tired or kind of burned himself away in a sense. And then he moved to Europe to recover and noticed that when he took a little distance to his previous routines, the business actually got better. So I'm a big believer in digitalisation and global tribes and networks and platforms and all that. So I try to be part of that dream in a sense and live the dream alive. And I have to still say that now I'm working with 5 different companies and they all seem to be quite happy with the kind of Teams or whatever platform settlement we have right now. And I guess I can carry on forever if I like it this way.
What will happen to the corporate offices? Are we ever going back to those? Maybe your place or similar facilities will become like meeting places for people working from home mainly, and then for project or periodically they will meet and be together for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and just to have some face time, quality time, and also maybe do some project work. Do you think that's becoming more or less like the new office?
Well, the last 2 months won't change anything. It's a too short period of time of knowing what will happen. But I'm sure if we want to, we can actually adjust the leadership culture and the business models actually to support local or kind of office and remote work. What's interesting right now is that companies like Google and Twitter has said that their employees can continue working from home all this year. So full year will definitely change some of our behavior. And of course, when we look at the remote work, It's a leadership and culture challenge because the remote workers need to be treated the same way, and we need the same social network support and of course control whether the work is conducted in offices or remote. So although evolution is quite slow, I think we will see more and more born global companies and ideas and platforms, and working from several separate locations will become partly a new standard. But of course, we all love to kind of have the social contacts and meeting people. But I think, Petri, next time we will meet, we'll go for beer and sauna and maybe some cold water. Why
Sounds
would
good.
yeah? Why wouldn't we go for beer and sauna? Why would we meet in an office? I think office is something that we need to rethink.
It's a relic.
It's a
Maybe
relic.
it was a temporary basis. It was invented some I don't know, 100 years back.
Yes, and you
Maybe,
can go back to you can go back to the Egypt and understand what other meeting rooms are, which still are built so that one kind of talks and the other ones listens, like the kind of Roman Empire kind of auditoriums, which is sad in a way, because I think we have more interactive and more balanced and more kind of equal ways of communicating on the digital platforms. But we need the physical connection and non-verbal communications, which isn't same even with the cameras. So we just, I think it's the culture we need to adjust.
a few weeks back in the episode called "There's No Control Z," I was talking to Joey in New York, and he was communicating with teams around the world, and mainly in the corporate world. And what he was experiencing was that the middle management and the employees in the obviously doing remote work, they were having a bit of issues with the calendar and realizing that, previously you were just by the water cooler and asking casually or something, or you were looking for your colleague and see that that person is busy at the moment, so I will not disturb. But when you do that remotely, you just need to book 15 minutes, calendar time. And when there's like 5-10 people doing that, you just realize that those casual few-minute talks actually occupied quite a bit of your day. Have you experienced similar kind of things or different kind of things in companies you're working with at the moment?
I think the topic you're now touching could be called something like culture redesign, which is like, how do we take care of the direct and indirect communication and information sharing when we are not in the same place together? That's a very interesting question, and what I've kind of learned or experienced, first of all, is that I'm a lot more focused and prepared when everything is on calendar. Whether I have a good hair day or bad hair day, I'm always prepared for the meetings, and that kind of brings value and quality to discussions, because everybody needs to do the same. And on digital platforms, what we have now, you still have to do it. So even in a ring or a group of people, that one talks and other ones comment. So it's different than doing whiteboard consulting or coaching, and everybody's kind of discussing and throwing ideas fast. It's different. Of course, we have Miro and those platforms that are trying to build those environments, which are actually quite cool already. But on the other hand, what I've also noticed is that we tend to agree more when we communicate on digital platform, because there's no like time, or it's too hard to start arguing or questioning things. So at least I feel in the kind of digital platforms meetings that people want to get rid of them and want to get things done and move forward. So we lose some of the maybe so not so important data in a sense and opinions on the way. And I think when we get back to the offices or saunas or when we meet, we should dedicate those physical meetings for kind of well-being and opinions and second guessing and all that that isn't present on this kind of telcos world. Because social well-being, after all, is the key.
So how do we maintain in these times? How do we pick up the silent signals we usually can, when we are physically present, we can, see a lot more than just the words.
Well, we have to redesign the culture to support those. Whether it's a Slack channel for daily jokes, I've distributed a lot of COVID jokes and memes just with my friends to kind of have some fun between the lines in a sense. And we need to kind of connect socially, emotionally, officially and non-officially, and we can't have official radio only. That's like BBC World after World War II. We can't go back to the one line, one way communication. So what we need to rethink is the culture and understand and make those jokes and cultural things, non-official things, visible and say, hey, those are part of our work and let's have fun now. That's why we also need those coffee breaks and gym things or yogas and all those in groups so that we kind of keep the culture going.
What drives you?
I've noticed even the last 3 months that I'm an entrepreneurial spirit. I like to design and build things. I'm excited about future, and times like these are a little bit depressing and disappointing because I know that after the tsunami there will be huge mess in the economy and all that. But I also realize that big crises, are the best times to advance evolution and innovation, not in a sense that you have all the money and time and resources in the world, but if you can finance things, everybody's definitely listening, and this is very, very good time to capitalize all the digital investments. I think one of my kind of saddest thing, kind of nightmares is what I kind of experience and see in corporate life is that they have invested in cars and gasoline and commuting to the office, expensive office space, computers, softwares, internet connections, software for viruses and all that. And then we sit side by side taking all that cost in and kind of live the analog and digital life or process side by side, which makes it very, very expensive and non-productive. That's why what I'm excited right now, what really drives me is the kind of innovation. And what I'm excited about right now is anything I put under virtual, from virtual restaurants to virtual reality, platform economy, ecosystems, virtual business models. I'm now excited about disruption again, in a sense, because I think that now we have the time and momentum for that. And COVID, horrible thing, kind of forced us to actually test drive and made the proof of concept that we can actually live in a totally different world where Amazon takes care of our daily needs, and then we can choose our life and style wherever we like it or however we want it, even many times a year.
Looking back your things what you've been doing, I see there's a few loops, 360 degrees, and one of them was pretty much like 10 years ago. You were kind of sick and tired of the the corporate world, and you wanted to be a freelancer and just be free and do things. And it was not virtualization at the time, but it was the digitalisation which found you, or you found, I don't know, actually, you have to tell me which way it went. And then quite a lot of things happened. Can you tell a bit about, that process and what you learned?
I have to start from the dot-com boom, because back then I was working with telcos, and then I became co-founder and CEO in a TV production company called Intervisio, which was internet television, Intervisio. And what we did back then, right after the dot-com boom, was that we created TV formats, which were back then called cross-media concepts, or cross-media TV, where we actually created TV shows that drove people to the websites and then to the SMS and mobile services 20 years ago. So the world and the business models weren't ready for cross-media and the kind of unified messaging back then. But what I learned was how people will or started using multiple platforms, and how people behaved on mobile and desktops and so on. So actually, after the dot-com boom, 2005, 2010, I tried to sell the idea of cross-media kind of communities and ecosystems to corporate world and even global industrial companies, where I tried to sell the idea that they would have R&D co-creation with clients and kind of communities for different innovation processes. I tried to sell Nokia idea of Nokia TV, where they would have internal CNN kind of mobile and global TV channel on internal communication, but that was all too early. And I really kind of frustrated myself and got tired of it. And then 2010, I said, okay, let's do something else. And of course, it took about a year or less when I started evangelizing and living the digital again, because I tried to get rid of the digital, but it didn't let me go, in a sense. So what I started back then in 2010, I started blogging on villetolvanen.com, and I started to make my work visible, which is one of my key lessons in business life, is make your work visible. Whether you're in photography or tech or anything, just surround yourself with the stuff and make your work visible. Create something on any platform and form, whether it's singing or pictures or text or anything, do it. And so I started blogging, which is one of my best ideas. I didn't know back then. My first blog said that I don't think that people have time to read other people's blogs. But anyhow, it became quite popular, and I was quite successful in blogging. And then I had some other friends and visitors writing on my platform, so it became a small community. And then I said, I think 2012, that let's dedicate this community to digitalization. So it became Digitalist Network. And then we copied some of TED Talks and best seminars and started running big events in Finland with kind of digital broadcasting and a strong social media support on the site, Twitter mainly, people tweeting from the live events. So I was back with the kind of cross-media platform. And what then happened, it became quite big phenomenon. And because I was so ambitious that I didn't want to end it up within the events and seminars, I then sold the kind of brand to a Finnish tech company called Ixenas, former Nokia subcontractor, which then became public company called Digitalist Group. And then I spent 2-3 years there, working first as a CDO and then CEO, and then stayed for a year in the board, and now I'm free and back in the square one again.
A lot of people are now 10 years back in the situation you were, after the financial crisis and what you just described. They need to get to the world to know who they are, and they need to find their customers, they need to find their audience. They need to do all that digitally. They just cannot meet people anymore. They are at their homes. So they need to set up blogs. They need to find their audience somehow. What are the advice and some of the experiences, maybe some failures you would like to share with people and say, please don't do this, and this is probably one of the best ideas you could ever have?
Well, I realized that, and in Becoming Ones, we have even more people who will be out of jobs or just frustrated with the situation, and they try to start creating something. And for me, back 20 years, I've always followed music business and the kind of rock stars and the bands, because music was one of the first business models that disrupted. The CD format went out, and the revenues and the profits, or the revenues, were kind of redistributed between the value chain. So when the music presenters, stars, and bands lost the CD sales, what they did, they started touring. They started touring live, and to do that, they also started using all the digital channels, taking photos, telling their stories, telling where they're going next, asking people in Austin to tell their friends that next gig will be in Houston. Metallica, which is one of the bands for me from the 80s and my youth, was one of the companies that created big Metallica TV and started broadcasting rehearsals and any kind of material from their tour life, so that being part of Metallica family was being part of their band's life and being able to follow that. Same thing happened in formulas and some other sports. So what they did was what I said earlier, and that's my key point. They made their work and life visible. Instead of trying to selling anything online or trying to catch the audience, they became solar power systems or something for, they started gathering the energy from the live meetings and audience and making their life and work visible. And that was exactly what I did with villetolvanen.com and then with Digitalist. And I don't know who thinks the same I do about future of business or digitalization, but I go to a street corner with my small guitar or iPhone and I start communicating. I start telling my views about life and future and business, and I find the audience. And that's, I think, exactly what everybody needs to do right now, is to become small lighthouses of their missions. Instead of trying to be smart or trying to say, hey, now we need to discuss virtual, or we need to discuss artificial intelligence or any cool stuff, don't become artificial intelligence experts. Start telling your perception of the world and business, and find your audience, find your people, and then create something.
During those years, you were really active in all the media possible, Twitter included, and you had a bit of a troll experience, and you needed to have some internal thoughts and feelings and experiences settled with that as well. Can you say something about the
Yeah,
one?
it's a good question. Again, not everybody's gonna like what you start doing if you become a lighthouse of your own vision. First of all, I have to say about being active. I was really active because I made my life class box in a sense that when I met with people, I said thank you in Twitter. It was nice to meet. So I made my network visible. When I had workshops or meetings with clients, I wrote a small blogs about the matter we discussed. Like, hey Petri, thank you. From today, we could actually now publish a small blog about culture redesign because we just discussed that. I could take and spend 10 minutes and put it on my blog.
Please put it in English.
Yes, I can do that. But I mean, we just created something. But when I make things visible, when I experience something, I try to record it and publish it. So it becomes visible to all the others, and it's not any of the right stuff or wrong stuff. It's the lighthouse in the dark that starts kind of messaging people that, hey, Ville Tolvanen, that's the digital guy. He talks digital, he knows digital, he works digital. And one very important thing before we go to the trolls and all that is that I never did any separate or additional communications. I just made my workshops, my blogs, my keynotes, podcasts, and those became articles by journalists. So I did my stuff. And that goes in a way back to the musicians and artists, even in the visual arts, they paint or they take photos and distribute those. The only thing that people do that they usually present when asked, and what I ask is to present every day, live your life and make a story about it. And if you want to become a brand, wrote a book about like personal branding, where we say that that's your best work and job insurance is to be known and have a name in a sense. But when you start when you start making noise or you become a voice, not everybody's going to like it. It's the same situation what happens in every episode of American Idol or The Voice of Finland is that we see somebody singing for 30 seconds and we immediately know whether we like it or not. And we should not worry about that because no one's going to like all of us, or everybody's not going to like all our stuff anyhow. And those people who are not our fans or so-called fans, they are not going to come to our funeral, and we're not going to share a retirement home or do business together. That's okay. You don't have to be agreed by everyone. You have to live your life and do it for yourself and for your own mission. And those trolls and peoples, and I was objected quite clearly for becoming the digitalist in a sense. And many people said that, who is that guy? I've done websites for 20 years, and what is he talking right now? So there was some objection and some dislike also my class box branding and being so visible in the media and social channels. So those are important. I always say that those are the people that kind of coaches you to be better. Those are the people you can say, hey, let me show you how good I am and what I will do next. Watch me doing this. And it's also very hard to get attention without those critics. So in a sense, we need those critics to understand that we actually are affecting people and the communication is effective. if nobody says anything, we're not making a point.
I recall it took a while for you to embrace the critics and those who are sort of mocking you. But then you sort of accepted it and started to use in your advantage. And at least once you were tweeting and saying that, hey, the blog post I was writing today, it's a bit confusing and messy, and I really need this person to actually make it really witty and make it better. So please, can you make it a better version of what I could come up with?
Yeah, well, there was those were the early times within the social media, and when so I was a case where I got this alter ego. I'm Ville Tolvanen, and somebody started writing Tolle Vilvanen blogs and distributing and kind of reimagining me. I was doing a lot of keynote business back then, and some of those people were harassing like company meetings and events. So they were like destroying the Twitter feed and all that. So it became obstacle for me in a sense that when I was interviewed for different events or hosting a keynote or throwing a keynote, I was asked like, how will those accounts in a way behave, and I couldn't say no more than actually that I don't know, but for sure they will increase the interest in the matter. So in a sense, it was really kind of affecting my business in some sense, but on the other hand, it made me a lot more interesting, and the followers, the sizes of audiences grew in a level that I would not have reached without having those people doing that. So I have to be kind of thankful, and it was painful at times, and it was a kind of growing experience. But I've learned a lesson. That's why I talk about artists and rock stars and painters, that no one's ever gonna like everybody's art, and if we understand that in the beginning, we are well better off and better built for the critics, which will of course always affect our feelings.
What is your advice for someone who is experiencing this for the first time? Words hurt, and there's somebody who is sort of stalking or doing something publicly which you don't really appreciate. Is it better to mute, block? What's your advice?
Well, first I could say congratulations, you're famous. In a sense, because if somebody starts imitating or harassing you, it means that you really have reached something. I'm muting nowadays everything. I see some critics. I don't bother. I'll get politicians. I sometimes go to the websites that discuss politicians, and then I see what people think about prime ministers and say, hey, I'm well off. I have a couple of people who spend their lives bullying my stuff or lowering kind of my work, but I'm glad I'm not a politician. So it's quite easy to mute. I don't follow them. I don't spend any time thinking about them. In a way, somebody just asked me today, like, okay, how do you create your visuals and writings and titles and all that? And I said, hey, I do one thing at a time. And when I write blogs, the most important thing for me is to write out one idea and then put a good title or kind of idea around one idea and then publish it. I never think about readers. I never think about whether the idea is good or bad or high or low quality. I let the audience decide. I learned from 10 years now within social media and kind of personal branding experience that you can't guess what the audience likes. All my biggest hits and all my success has been part of the chain, part of the experience, part of the flood. I can't control or decide who's going to like it. And that also comes from the music. When you're singing in the street corner or doing your first kicks in a pub, you can't decide who the fans are going to be and what kind of audience will enjoy the music. So you can't control your future. You can't decide the audience. All you can do is put out your best.
What makes you happy?
I said earlier that I'm an entrepreneur, so I like to achieve things. I like to plan things. I like something. What I learned in business school is that management is planning, leading, organizing, and controlling of all activities. So I like to do planning. I like to organize things. I like to lead processes, and I love analytics. I love numbers. I love to follow. I'm so fascinated still with digital platforms and internet that I keep following all the numbers in Facebook groups, LinkedIn, Google Analytics, all but just for the learning experience to understand how the communication actually works and how we can create things and affect people.
You were describing that, and some even quoted you publicly saying that you like the digitalist evangelist, or evangelist of digital in Finland at least. Is there enough space or oxygen for other people? I mean that now everybody needs to start to have their own tiny brand or find their audience. Is that actually even possible if everyone becomes their own brand?
Yeah, like sharing the Zoom channel for 10,000 digitalists. Let's go back to the music. When music was disrupted by digital platform, one of the key phenomena was the long tail. And the same thing happened with startups and digital innovation. There was a big long tail of things around the big ones. So the new wasn't born in a big way that there would be a third player in the market, but there would be a long tail of small players. I believe that there's space for a lot people and a lot of different roles. If we would take, say, data, who personally owns data in Finland or Sweden or London, you can't really come up with a long list of names. So the same thing what happened in music, there's so many subcultures and sub things. Same thing happens with technology and digital, is that there's so many different playgrounds you can establish or run that you can actually do a lot enough for your own business to actually get the attention, find the partners, find the customers, and live happily ever after. So I think that everybody should start their own channel in a sense and keep doing the job and also keep finding the tribe they belong to. It doesn't have to be massive. It has to be part of the business in a sense. As I said, although they say that I'm the evangelist, I never done separate communication. I just speak out what I've learned or what I do or what we have created. I'm kind of visible in a sense. Of course, it means that I communicate a lot more than the average entrepreneur does, but that's the way I have reached the standard of living being Piemonte, Italy, and still being able to finance my businesses, finding the clients, satisfying clients, and finding new jobs all the time.
So to put it in a word, it's about sharing. You're basically sharing the journey you are at. It's not about preaching to people, telling what to do. It's just about that you just let other people know what you're doing and what you're thinking at this point.
Yeah, making your work visible. That's the key thing. And I have to elaborate a little bit on that because this is so funny to me that often when we discuss these things, I have to go back to the birth of World Wide Web and the internet. Like, what's the kind of idea of internet? Connecting computers to share data, which of course means in advanced and mobile platforms and digital connections means sharing user experiences, sharing people's ideas and values and value. So actually, when we started preaching digital, we had a saying, sharing is caring, where we meant that, if you want the other people on their computers, offices, and living rooms to see the information or learn the information, you should be sharing things. So I connect making things visible and creating your own voice with the sharing is caring principle, where as you become the lighthouse, blinking lighthouse for any vision or idea you have, it takes a little bit of time and there may be objection, but then you become expert in that field, and finally, and sooner or later, you'll start living by doing that. It becomes your profession, and it's the same thing. What you have to do, whether you're formula driver or a singer or take photos or anything, you just have to repeat thousands and thousands of times and keep sharing.
Within the last year, you've been starting to take at least baby steps towards something new. Maybe you don't know yourself either what's going to come at the end of that, but you've been throwing some ideas, discussing with your community and people, and one of the terms come up by looking at what you've been writing is a virtual activist.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Virtual activist is something, and you're right. I'm kind of rebuilding myself once again. Actually, my accountant said that I have journeys of trips from 3 to 5 years. So I should build my business model so that the topic, in a sense, lasts for 1,000 or 1,500 days. Which is, by the way, very similar to, say, David Bowie, who even changed his name and character totally during his career to find the next era, in a sense, or start a new era, which is fantastic, of course, that the guy is bold enough to introduce a new name and go to a live TV show and say, "Hey, I'm Chicky Stardust," or something like that. So anyhow. Virtual activist is something that I look into the post-COVID corona world and ask myself and community that is it so that last 20 years we spent on distributing mobile phones, laptops, and connections, then that was called digital channels or digitalisation in some sense. Is it now that we start virtualizing business models and ecosystems on platforms so that we can actually capitalize the investment we've done already? As I mentioned earlier, I see so much analog processes with digital channels or computers on side by side. And I'm thinking, why do we spend so much money traveling, events, physical matters in a sense that couldn't we find a better balance? And I think finding a better balance with virtual outsourced ecosystems, shared revenue, resources, and so could be something that we could call virtual. virtual restaurants or virtual business models or virtual platforms. And that's, if I'm thinking about how we could activate the virtual face of the world, what we need is to become activists in that field and ask companies and their owners and boards that could we actually virtualize some of the business or business models during the next 5 years to actually create better and more sustainable version of the company and the business, and in that sense not go back to the future but back to the tomorrow by returning tomorrow on with different ideas and different kind of systems and different platform for the business, which we already are doing.
What is the most radical idea you could give to a CEO or entrepreneur running a company?
I think most radical thing you can do in any business is take a clean sheet of paper, white paper, and have a so-called zero meeting or workshop and say, hey, let's draw or design this company as if we would start it today. And I've done that practice with several companies and some owners. And the fact is that if you draw the company design if we would start it today, the picture is totally different than the existing operations usually. And then we can ask, why are we running these legacy things? Why are we in silos? Why do we have processes? Why are we organized the way we are if we would not do it if we would start the company today? And it's a scary thing. I've also seen a lot of rejection. I see a lot of CEOs saying that I don't want to do it. I don't want to draw the picture because I know how much different it would be. And I like the idea of the work that needs to be done. Change is different, but change is difficult, but I think we should always embrace the change and say that let's hug future and tomorrow and make the better version of the company and ourselves every day, every year, and all the time. As we do in sports or arts and culture, we try to improve things. We never say that the last painting was the best I can do. We always say, let's do even better.
What is your favorite word?
Virtual.
What is your least favorite word?
Don't fix it if it ain't broken.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
New.
What turns you off?
We know.
What is your favorite curse word?
Fuck.
What sound or noise do you love?
I love the Italian birds singing in Piemonte. They're very loud, they're very noisy. You could be disturbed by that, but it's a lovely thing. The summer is here already.
What sound or noise do you hate?
People fighting to get into the plane or trying to get into a restaurant without reservation.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Oh, I would love to build houses or do interior design.
What profession would you not like to do?
Teacher.
If you could be a co-founder of any startup at any era, which one would you choose?
Well, I never thought about that before, but just instantly came to my mind that, of course, I would like to be picking apples in California.
Thank you, Ville. It's been a total pleasure.
Thank you, Petri. It's been awesome time, and I think it's very nice to share actually thoughts like how we're thinking at the moment during the COVID crisis. It's definitely a momentum and start for something new. So it's good to be part of this. Thanks.